Thanks for a really inspiring talk. I'd like to know what you like best about your job. Do you ever get frustrated? And also, you talked about a couple of companies. Maybe there should be more pressure on the public pension fund community to know more about South Africa and for them to really push some of their money managers to invest more.
Thank you. I agree with the second part of the question. I'd love to get more people coming to invest. And actually, the Minister of Economic Development in South Africa, Ibrahim Patel, is actually planning a road trip around the United States for that very purpose. After this, I'm actually going to New York to talk to a number of investors about looking at the continent and coming to join in the experience there. In terms of being ambassador, the one thing I can say with 100% certainty is when I wake up in the morning, whatever I thought I was going to do is almost never what I end up doing. When I first got to South Africa, I met with a prominent South African who I said to him, so how do you think about the future of South Africa? Is it good? Is it positive? He said to me, it depends which side of the bed I get up on. And I think it describes an almost schizophrenic society, which South Africa can be. You can look at South Africa and see tremendous progress since 1994. One of the great miracles of our time that we were able to have this racial reconciliation peacefully, that the number of houses that have been built, the number of children who are going to school now, the number of people who have water and electricity. It's truly an amazing accomplishment. Then you can look at the other side. Huge income inequality. Unemployment, that officially is 25%, but among youth is closer to 60%. As I said earlier when I was answering one of the questions, an education system that while almost all children now go to school, the quality of the education has declined since apartheid by most studies. Declined since apartheid. It's a country with huge opportunity and huge challenges, and it makes my job very exciting every day. The other thing that was sort of a surprise when I got there was I, as an undergrad, had protested against apartheid, tried to get Harvard, where I went, to divest. The South Africans remember America's role in the struggle very differently. They remember that we were on the wrong side. They remember that our government, in its fight against communism, viewed the ANC as communists. So it's a very different story, and it's one that I think it's going to take a number of years for us to rebuild that trust, working with the South Africans, and to work with this next generation of young leaders who are coming up and aren't biased by that history. And I think it calls upon the American government to do the right thing going forward. And as you look at what's been happening throughout North Africa, I think this is one of the challenges the administration has been trying to balance. How do we balance this rising spread of democracy yet promote stability and good governance at the same time? There, and then Alex.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on your comments about the political future. Obviously, this has been an extraordinary spring. What, in your view, needs to be the priority of the Obama administration as it relates to looking at the political economy of Africa in the second part of this term and in the next term?
That's a very good question. When Vice President Biden and Deputy President Motlanthe met, and we were talking about what was going on in North Africa and the evolving and how it would apply to Africa, Vice President Biden said, if this experience hasn't taught all of us to be humble about what we can predict and what we can't predict, nothing will. And I think it's one of the challenges that we're all trying to sort through. How do you, and as an American, in my official role, I've been struck by how often people expect us to have the answers on either side. I went on a talk show, radio talk show in South Africa, and literally one caller was calling saying, if you're invading Libya, why aren't you invading Zimbabwe? And the other people was describing, all the murder we were committing in Libya. And I can't, we have this dimension. And I think the big thing for America, and it's something President Obama lectured all of us as we went out as ambassadors, was to listen more. Listen and find good partners that we can work with. When he went to Africa, everyone expected him to go to Kenya. He went to Ghana for a very specific reason, which he wanted to promote good governance and democracy and to congratulate the Ghanaians on what they'd achieved. When you look at who he's invited to come visit with him, he's trying to send a message about we're going to work with very good partners across the world. He did a Young Africa Leadership Forum where Fred was one of the attendees at it, where we brought young future leaders, I think it was they were all under 40, right, Fred? Under 35, to Washington, 140 of you? 115, to meet with them and to hear their views on what the challenges were with the continent and share perspectives. So I think there's, one, a shift to start listening more. Two, to support good models where we see them. And three, to use our foreign assistance to help promote, if you look at like the Millennium Challenge Corporation, it has, which helps do infrastructure in certain countries, the country compacts, and this is something the Bush administration started, but I think it's very valuable, help promote good governance. There's certain things you have to agree to get the money, and it helps build that culture of good governance. But they're projects that are designed and asked for by the host country. Our PEPFAR program, which is our far and away our largest contribution to Africa, which is our HIV/AIDS program, we are now trying to figure out how do you turn that over to host country governments. In some cases, turn over the management of it. So in Rwanda, which we've talked about a bunch of times, they're now telling us what to do on the PEPFAR side. In South Africa, we hope to go a step further, and the South African government's committed to this, to over time stop having them take over the whole program, where we won't be funding it anymore. And we're working right now on what's the trajectory, how do we do that? And I think it's about trying to come back to to the FABA idea, making sure that the future of Africa is up to Africans. And our policy should be to partner and be there to help those who have that vision and are driving it to building prosperous democratic societies.
I think we have time for one more question.
Alex,
do you want to bring a mic up? Or it's coming.
right there.
My question is along the same lines. Where does Africa play versus China versus India, Russia? What's the strategy objectives, and where do we fit in that continuum?
You know, it's a very good question. And I'll say something that's a little controversial and probably get me fired, but I don't think it has a prominent enough role. I think when I talk to people in the White House or in the State Department, the number of crises and challenges that they're dealing with, whether it's Somalia, whether it's Cote d'Ivoire had all the attention for a period of time. Now it's obviously Libya and what's going on in North Africa. I think we need to step back, and I've been advocating this in Washington, and develop a more comprehensive economic strategy for Africa that, to me, should center on some of the stuff that a bunch of people have been talking about, but helping Africa build that infrastructure that will allow it to integrate into the global economy and to do trade within Africa. So this is something I've been promoting and trying to push within Washington, and a number of companies that I talk to, are American companies who are trying to do business in Africa, are very interested in this as well. And it's something again, the future of Africa is up to Africans. It's something that NEPAD, the AU, SADC, COMESA, EAC are all very committed to and interested in, and I think it's something we could be uniquely helping on along with the World Bank and others. But I will tell you, there is one person who follows Africa and thinks this way, way ahead of everyone else in the whole administration. You know, somebody else made a comment about oh, you did, Teresa, about WikiLeaks earlier, which hopefully Sahara Networks is not revealing classified information and all of that. But we do have to write all these cables back at the State Department where we describe what's going on in the world. And when I'm not a career diplomat, so when I first got to the State Department, I couldn't believe that people were writing all these and who read them and why are we doing this. And so when I was back in Washington, I've been in the job about 4 months, I said, okay, I'm going to find out whether anybody actually reads these things, other than Julian Assange and others, as we later found out. And I started asking around, and as I expected, most people didn't read them. And then I found out the person who digests everything he can get on Africa is the president. And he gets his briefing book, and notes come back saying, what about this, what about that? When I first went to, President Obama held a nuclear security summit in Washington, brought in, I think it was 48 world leaders. And, I was flown back for it because there was going to be a bilap between President Zuma and President Obama. I got off the plane, the meeting was at like 2. I got off the plane at 9, whatever it was. And the person who was staffing there said, okay, we're going to brief him an hour before. And I said, okay, can I see the briefing book? And they gave me this 100-page book. I remember the president was doing 12 bilaterals that day. He was meeting with 12 world leaders, so he'd gotten 12 books this thick. And I said, okay, where's the executive summary? He's not going to be able to read all this. And they said, we didn't do one. And I'm like, oh, man. So I'm like jet lagged. I'm getting off the plane. I'm going to have 15 minutes to brief him, and I've got to digest this whole thing down to what are the critical points. And I'm like, this is not going to be good. So I'm sweating up to the last hours. I walk in. I'll tell the whole details of the story. There's no reporters here, are there? Yeah, exactly. It's going to all be tweeted anyway.
Yeah, it is being recorded, Don.
It's okay. He greets me, and we're doing all the niceties, asking all about the kids. And Mr. President, we really got to sit down and, I'm very nervous about this. We've got to, sit down. I got to tell you about what's in the briefing book. And he's like, Don, I've just done 8 of these. I really need a break, and Tiger Woods is making his comeback today, and I want to go watch a little. So he said, let's go watch 5 minutes. So we go in this room, and we're watching 5 minutes of the golf. And finally, now we got 5 minutes to go, and I'm like dying at this point. And I've got Rahm Emanuel there, and Secretary Clinton, and the President, and Jim Jones, who was then the National Security Advisor. And I'm thinking, this really isn't going to be good. And finally, he turns off the TV, he looks at me and says, okay, Don, what do you want to tell me? And I'm like, and so I start down my list. And he said, I already know that. I already know that. And he's literally knew everything that was in the damn book. And I was done in 2 minutes because it was very clear that he'd read the whole thing. We then go into the meeting, and it's towards the end of the meeting. It was a half hour long. We're probably in the 25th minute. And President Zuma asks President Obama a question. Without telling you what the details of the question were, it was pretty obscure. And I thought, oh, no. I didn't brief him on this. I didn't tell him about it. And there's no way that he will know this. President knocked it out of the ballpark, had all the facts, knew what he was talking about. I went back later and looked. It was on page 95 of the 110-page briefing book. So, with that, thank you very much.